Hi everybody, in this video we are going to solve the last question. We are going to learn just a little bit of coding because it can be super useful when making macros in Excel. So let's get started. Let's just follow the instructions. The first thing to do when making a new macro is to save the document as a macro-enabled document, which you do in File, Save As, and then choose down here Macro Enabled Workbook. Next, we're going to create a new macro, and we're going to create a new worksheet and name it John. Next, let's test this macro. Does it work? No, it doesn't. Why not? Let's click on Debug to find out. In fact, the reason it's not working is because the macro is trying to select a sheet named Sheet 1. But when we created a new sheet, the name of the sheet was automatically given as Sheet 2. So we're going to modify this macro manually so that it always works. We do that by adding these two lines of code. First, we have to add some apostrophes ahead of the lines that don't work. Adding apostrophes just means that these lines of code are now comments and not runnable code. We could also delete these lines, but I prefer to keep them in as comments so that I can easily reverse engineer them. For example, I can see that to add a sheet, I just have to write sheets.add. After adding the extra lines of code, let's test it. First, we click up here on Stop to stop the debugger. And then we run the macro. Hooray, success! Now we want to copy these two lines of code for each employee. So first we go to Macros, View Macro, and then we click on Edit to edit the code of the macro. And then we simply copy and paste and manually edit the names. Next, we're going to record a new macro, and we're later going to use the generated lines of code to combine the two macros into one. So let's start by recording a new macro, which copies the data into the summary sheet. Okay, let's delete these sheets before we continue. Now that we have recorded the macro, we can edit it. We can find a list of all macros in this module, which is in this workbook up here. This is a code that was generated when we recorded the macro. Let's just copy and paste it to the other macro. We only need to make some small edit. We have to make sure that the very first thing we do is select the summary sheet. So there must be a line of code here somewhere that shows us how to do that. Yep, that's this line. I'm gonna copy this and move it up here. And that should be working. Let's test it. We can test it by clicking on play here too. Yep, it seems to work. We can test it again and watch the macro in action. And that was all for this final example. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.